Hi there guys, I hope you are having a good day. Grab yourself a cup of tea and let's talk some boxing. Now, Eddie Hearn has revealed that they will try to make a deal with Oleksandr Usyk, but if they cannot, they will ask for an extension to make the deal. They will not go to purse bids. So, in the event that that happens and they cannot make a deal with Team Usyk, then the belt will be vacated and they will go a different way. Now, there could be many reasons as to why that happens. I mean, they said that they don't want to be governed by these organizations too much because AJ has to fight mandatory after mandatory and he rarely gets to face a voluntary. His last voluntary was obviously Andy Ruiz Jr., which was supposed to be Gerald Miller, which was a very difficult situation given that Ruiz came in late and then of course AJ had the defeat and then won the belts back, but it doesn't seem like he has all that much in the way of wiggle room to face any opponent that he wants. I mean, naturally, he's going to want to face an Oleksandr Usyk, a Dillian White, a Tyson Fury, but it's easier said than done, especially when there are governing bodies and there are always hoops to jump through in order for him to fight someone he wants to. I mean, look at the situation with the Tyson Fury fight, how many hoops he had to jump through, and that fight didn't end up happening. Now, the reason why he was able to do that, of course, is because Tyson Fury would be for undisputed, so he can ask for an exception from his mandatory to go and make a unification fight. That was the reason why that would be happening, but it isn't. So now he must face Oleksandr Usyk. He cannot ask for an exception to go and fight a voluntary. So in this situation, he is kind of in that position of having to face Oleksandr Usyk or lose his title. Now, of course, the reason behind them wanting to make a deal with Usyk is because they can have certain stipulations put into the contract that would favour Anthony Joshua, but then they're going to have to pay Usyk more and give him some things that he will want as well. Now, one big thing will be a rematch clause because given this is a mandatory, there is no rematch. So if they make a deal in the meantime before purse bids are called, they can put a rematch in the contract and perhaps give Usyk more money and guarantees on the second fight if that were to happen, and then the deal can be struck. But if it goes to purse bids, they cannot have a rematch clause put in the contract. Now, I don't believe that that is the only reason, of course, but I do believe that that could be a factor. Not a huge reason, but still. AJ does want to fight Oleksandr Usyk. He has said in the past that he's interested in facing off with Oleksandr Usyk. What he had previously planned was to fight Tyson Fury or Deontay Wilder, become undisputed, then have the undisputed heavyweight champion face off against the former undisputed cruiserweight champion in Usyk. But it hasn't really worked out that way, but still, that does tell you that Anthony Joshua has been looking to compete with Oleksandr Usyk. Now, where he is currently is he will be starting a training camp for his next opponent, whether it be Usyk or someone else. He has been preparing in the hope that he might face Tyson Fury next, and that means that things will change. And also that is why Eddie Hearn has explained they are looking to get a full camp in, instead of any less than that like they had for Andy Ruiz Jr. because Usyk is a live opponent, he's a southpaw, he's undefeated, former undisputed cruiserweight champion, so this guy is not someone to be taken lightly, despite what his last two performances have shown in the heavyweight division. I mean, he did labour a little bit against Witherspoon, and I guess you could say that he did struggle a little bit against Derek Chisora. That wasn't an easy fight, but then Chisora is not an easy fight for anyone. So even though that could demonstrate what kind of a threat Usyk is to the heavyweight division, I still do believe that he will cause Anthony Joshua problems. And regardless of those two performances, I believe we can still expect to see a Usyk who is on form, an Usyk who is incredibly tricky and difficult to navigate, especially for Anthony Joshua, because Joshua is the bigger man, yes, has the physical advantages, the weight advantages also, but Usyk will have the speed, the movement, and the endurance. So there are things that Usyk can do that will bother Anthony Joshua, so he needs a full camp to prepare for a tricky southpaw who is as skillful as Usyk is. Do you know what? I bet Joe Joyce is watching this situation carefully because he could get a world title opportunity here. I mean, I know that the interim status was taken away from him. I mean, he never had that status, but he was going to fight Oleksandr Usyk for it. So he had that, and given what could happen with a potential undisputed fight, that would mean that the winner of Usyk Joyce would be upgraded to WBO champion after undisputed. So he was essentially one fight away from becoming world champion, and given undisputed falling apart, that meant that Joe Joyce would no longer get his shot to fight Oleksandr Usyk for the interim title, but still, he might actually end up fighting Oleksandr Usyk for that title in a vacant world title shot. That is definitely still possible, and it all does depend on what Anthony Joshua does next. It's a shame for Joyce because he is someone who has also been caught up in this situation, waiting for an opportunity, waiting for a fight that never ended up happening, but still could happen. But again, does he want to really wait in the hope that he could get an Usyk fight? I mean, it's only going to be a week or so I wouldn't imagine that Joyce is going to make a decision on his next fight until the situation is sorted between AJ and Usyk, and AJ is actually definitely going to fight him, because if not, then guess what? Joyce has a vacant world title opportunity, which is great for him. Now, who could Anthony Joshua fight? I mean, they've been talking about Andy Ruiz, or Ruiz said he would like to. I'm not convinced that that's going to happen. Luis Ortiz, that's an interesting avenue they could explore, but I wouldn't imagine that Ortiz would get the fight. I'd imagine that if they were going to go anyway, I'd say it would be Dillian Whyte. I wouldn't imagine they'd want to go and vacate a world title just to fight Luis Ortiz or Ruiz for a third time. There needs to be some kind of reason. There needs to be something put into place that can live up to something like a Usyk fight, and Dillian Whyte definitely would. I mean, I know that AJ is going to want to hold on to all of his world titles, and I do fully expect him to strike a deal with Oleksandr Usyk, but in the event that it ends up going to purse bids and they decide to vacate, I believe that the other viable option would be Dillian Whyte. I know there is that storyline for Ruiz 3, but I'm not really interested in that at the moment. I would rather see Ruiz string together 1 or 2 good wins before getting another opportunity, and Luis Ortiz, 2 defeats to Deontay Wilder, he's still in and around there somewhere. But again, I think that there needs to be some kind of reason. There needs to be this interesting fight or interesting dynamic, a big fight that would make Anthony Joshua want to vacate and go in that direction. And I know that it's not down to that. I know it's not down to him wanting to vacate to fight someone else. It's down to not wanting to be bound by the rules of a governing body so much and not have so many mandatories. I know that's the situation, but there still needs to be some kind of motivation to drop one of the world titles to go and face someone else. And I don't think the motivation would be there for a third Ruiz fight or a Luis Ortiz fight. I think that the only one it would be is Dillian Whyte. But anyway, guys, what are your thoughts on this? I still fully expect the WBO mandatory to come. I do fully expect Anthony Joshua to be fighting Oleksandr Usyk next. But guys, anyway, drop your thoughts on this in the comments below. Also leave a like and grab that subscribe button. Thanks guys.